Hello, my name is Przemysław Połacz. I'm working at Sylius for almost 5 years, mostly in sales and marketing related stuff, but also with partners. And today we're starting a series called the Expert Talks, in which we're interviewing people from our community, tech, business, just the experts in general in their topics. And today I have a pleasure of chatting with Paulius from LupaSearch and Romain from Gali. I will be talking about importance of search in e-commerce in general. Gentlemen, I already introduced you, but if you want to add something more, please, Paulius.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paulius. I'm working with LupaSearch more than 3 years. In e-commerce, I'm almost 2 decades. Since 2009, I was founding an e-commerce solution agency and was working on large-scale e-commerce projects for many years. During COVID, actually, it was an opportunity, to deep dive into e-commerce search field. And since then, I'm here. So that's short about me.
Thank you for joining us. Romain?
So I'm Romain. I'm in the e-commerce field since 2011. I've mostly worked with Magento solution during the early year, and I've built a merchandising solution which is named ElasticSuite, which we decided to move on to a generic merchandising solution 3 years ago, and this solution is named Gali.
Thank you for the introduction. You already gave us a brief overview of your companies and the histories. So maybe, because I already know your story, Romain, that you decided to move from Magento to work with other platforms as well to make your solution more available. But Paulius, why did you decide from the e-commerce agency to dive into the search? Because of your experience with customers, you thought that you want to add something, or you had your own personal experience?
Good question. I mentioned about that breakdown was during COVID time. So everyone who works in e-commerce remember these years during COVID when e-commerce just boosted, not in percentage, but in time. So everything started to grow significantly. And when you are working with the different e-commerce solutions, you realize and you see very clearly which parts are weak and which needs to be strengthened. And e-commerce search was that field which we noticed that it has significant influence for e-commerce results, and it needs to be improved. It needs to be changed. So it was like the first sign and the first pain point which we noticed, and we realized that we need to do something with that. So I think that the history behind this topic is that during that time, we realized that a lot of things has to be changed in e-commerce search, because when everything is expanding in, let's say, 2-3 times, you see, the weak point.
So the shop itself is not catching up to the solution. Like the solution is growing, but the search itself isn't going with the growth.
When you have a solution and you are taking care of all the solution, and it's suddenly, in 1 day, just double or triple, yes. So you see some weak points, which actually needs to be improved. And it affected a lot conversion via search, actually, like the results. So the traffic is growing in times, but the conversion shows the different results via search. So we noticed that part that actually search before COVID was in one level, and after COVID is completely in another level. Of course, there is another part which like 2022 when generative models came into the world. So it's like another chapter of this story. But the first chapter was when you experience a significant growth, you see some weak points, and we noticed opportunities there actually, and we started to work and invest heavily in this field.
If I can add maybe something on top of that, Paulus, did you have also the feeling that all the e-commerce platforms and e-commerce solutions do have an implementation for search out of the box, but we had the feeling that those implementations were hitting the limits actually, and that's why we decided to build something which was specialized, because we had the feeling that building a great product discovery or merchandising experience is a business on its own, and it's not something that should be handled by the e-commerce solution themselves.
Yes. So I totally agree, but our experience is a bit different because like we were a small agency, we didn't have so many clients, and they were pretty big ones. And all of them, they were using third-party software. So we developed one search many years ago by ourselves. It was built on Solar. It was B2B system with a not so high volume of visitors. And it still works. I mean, everything is fine. But when you experience really large amount of SKUs and really large volume, and you mentioned a really good keyword, merchandising, which I think is like becoming more and more relevant for everyone, that search is not only about autocomplete and auto-suggest, it's about what is inside, what kind of rules you are creating. And so I think if we would have, with the search experts, such a discussion before COVID, I think it was a discussion about how to create relevancy, how to create auto-suggest, auto-correct, and auto-complete functions. And in this age, in this time, we are discussing, I think, completely different topics about, it's like in the next level, it's actually like a different category of MarTech technologies, which we are discussing at this moment, I think. Because no one, I think, before COVID was showing keyword, let's say, merchandising so often as now.
You already answered one of my questions that I had for the future. So what are the challenges of the e-commerce business when it comes to search? But I wanted to ask another question, because we all have experience in the e-commerce. We're pretty aware why search is important. But when I'm talking with people who are starting their first shop, or even sometimes the second shop, or we're talking about e-commerce in general, most of the time they're not mentioning the search. They're talking about the speed, obviously the scalability of the solution, costs with it, etc., front-end usage, technologies, but they're not mentioning the search. So why it's currently critical? Maybe Romain, would you like to start?
Yeah, I can start definitely. The search, it's critical because it's the primary way the users navigate on catalogs. That's especially true on large catalogs. I don't remember the exact figures, but there are plenty of Gartner studies about that, and it's something between 60 and 70% of the user will first interact with the search bar when they reach your website. So if your search engine is not fast, is not relevant, does not show up the right products according to the right time and the right users and so on, you're doing it wrong, because you will need search engine to improve the engagement of the users, to reduce the friction. And in the end, of course, it will impact the conversion rate of the website. So in a nutshell, the reason why for me it's really, really critical nowadays.
So the user experience aspect of the search is the most important one, you would say?
Definitely.
Okay, so to reverse that question, if I have a poor search engine in my e-commerce platform, or maybe let's rephrase it even, because obviously the poor search engine is such a general term, but what are the signs of badly implemented search functionality from your perspective? Not only like not finding the stuff that I want to, obviously, but if you could go in depth, Paulius, maybe.
So first indication, which actually e-commerce experts can't see, it's customer frustration. So it's like, like users coming and, she or he is frustrated. Analytical person who is monitoring e-commerce system starting to see lower retention. And lower retention, usually, there are a couple of numbers which you can track on analytical tools, and you see some increased cart abandonment, you see higher bounce rates, you see lower CTR. So actually, analytical person can see in some of the numbers how this frustration affects the e-commerce. So it's not only about, that you doesn't find something when you search, but in general, some critical analytical data of your e-commerce health is starting to decrease. And this is the indication that this frustration is increasing. So actually, this is how you can, like a doctor, guess that you have a huge disease, like poor search experience. And then you have some kind of numbers, digits from analytical data, which needs to be improved. So I think that would be the answer of poor search functionality, how to see that and how to start to think how to increase those numbers.
Sylius is often used in unusual examples. It offers a lot of customization. So our question would be, let's make it a little bit simple. What are the biggest differences in B2C and B2B e-commerce platform? Would you say, obviously the product catalog most of the time, and the variants of products would be one of the reasons, but maybe you have some examples of you've encountered some differences between those two implementations from the search perspective.
B2B e-commerce search is often focused on product code search. business customers typically know exactly what they need. So search functionalities must support this precision. And when we talk about B2B businesses, also they have advantage in returning visitors with historical data on past purchase, enabling business to leverage sales data. If we talk about B2C, usually it's a text-based search queries. And we see that the future is, question answer, that you type a question and you are receiving answer, or your search query is becoming longer. So it requires more flexible search engine and handle a wide range of product descriptions and synonyms. So those are the biggest, let's say, if we would be like in very general view, we would see, B2B and B2C. So B2B is a code-based, large catalogs, and B2C, it's abstract, text-based search query, also with large catalogs.
Another case would be maybe looking after that B2C and B2B. Do you have any examples of how your solution helped the customer with the search engine? It could be like your general experience, or if you could have a specific experience, like very either interesting or unusual implementation. We would love to hear examples if it's possible. Romain, if you'd like to start to make it a search engine sandwich.
Yeah. I can start and I can stay in the B2B field for now, because what is also important for some B2B merchant is the segmented search results, because we still have them client which is selling a lot of material to a lot of different businesses. And one of the use case they have is, if I am a baker and I come to the website and I'm searching for paper bags, I expect to see brown paper bags to put my bread on them. But if I'm a pharmacist and I search for paper bag, I expect to see white paper bag with the red cross on it. But in the end, it's the same. It's paper bag, and the people will come and search for paper bag. So for this merchant, we developed on top of Gali mechanism to allow segmented search, which allow when a baker visits the website and search for paper bag to see paper bag for baker, and the pharmacist will see paper bag for pharmacist, and so on for other businesses and products. So that was quite unusual and specific demand, but this was very relevant on a B2B website, which is selling to a lot of different companies.
Paulius?
One interesting case was with telecommunication company, pretty large telecommunication company. And we helped them integrate more than 5 sources of information into one feed. So actually it was like customer support info, it was allowing users to find articles, SKUs, products, of course, frequently asked questions, service descriptions, general articles. I mean, it was a lot of sources into one feed. And this has significantly reduced the volume of customer support. So that was the first case which I've seen when we are talking about not increasing sales in general, but reducing customer support volume. So that was pretty interesting case, how they solved that using search field. And then another interesting case about assortment, that usually one partner just said one sentence that search is the biggest data collection software actually of e-commerce, because each user is leaving a lot of traces. And if you analyze that data through analytical tools, you do really a lot of good business decisions, and especially on assortment. For example, one bookstore noticed that there is like a specific book, specific language where users are looking and they can't find it. And they just uploaded the new feed, specific literature, specific language, and they increased sales. So I really enjoy that people are looking at the data and they see they can accept some really good decisions based on data. And one more, which I've made a note, is large home and garden client. They are selling everything. They are selling also electronics and, it's huge brand. And let's say when searching for brands like Samsung or Bosch, and search results match multiple categories, helping to narrow down the assortment. You have, let's say, more than 3,000 filters, and you can make them in a dynamic way to improve searching experience. So what I wanted to notice that it's not only about search field, but also about filtering, because it's like integral part. And if you make it dynamic, then you can reach really significant results. So that was also a very enjoyable experience to see what kind of results business can achieve. But I believe each case is different, and it's really interesting experience how you are coming to the point, because each case usually is unique when you are starting to dig deeper.
Yeah, for me, if I can add something from my perspective, it's very interesting that if you're focused on a different branch of e-commerce, like search, for example, you can learn some stuff that you were overlooking previously, but in the end, they turned out to be important. Like the bug case that Romain mentioned, right? It's pretty obvious, but to create a solution that would differentiate those facts and would be also helpful to customer, because the best thing is if you can solve problem for customer before they even have that problem, right? This is the fun part of what we're doing, and I like it from my perspective as well.
Yes.
So one other question would be, both of you kind of answered that, but maybe if you could narrow it down for someone who would be looking for that specific answer. So what, from your perspective, would be the key features to a successful search engine implementation and also a solution?
I would say you've used the term search engine in your question. So I will assume in my answer, we are speaking only about the search engine part. And the answer is different if you speak about merchandising and product discovery.
So maybe let's go for the upper level.
The upper level, which is merchandising and product discovery, will be all about pushing the proper product to the proper customer. It's not only being able to match with the keywords typed by the user, even if he do some typos or things like that. It's all about pushing the right product. And what do I mean? It's something like, imagine I'm selling cultural goods, and actually there will be a new Harry Potter book which is coming next week. You will have to refine your merchandising strategy so that when people comes to the website and search for Harry Potter, you are not showing the DVDs, you are not showing the other books, the old one, but you are sure to display the new one, the books that will come out next week, so that people will be able to go to this product page and to pre-order and so on. That's where your solution will have to give to the merchandising team a way to customize the ranking to be sure that it's the proper product they will push to the top of the listing and so on, according to the seasonality or incoming products and so on. So that's the first part. And what I do think is something very important as well is to be able to leverage the product ranking and the merchandising rules from the user behavior themselves to allow popular products to climb when they are popular and to go down when they are not popular anymore, because something new is catching attention of the customer. And so for me, that's the key point. There are plenty other, but those ones are really important to start with, at least for the merchants.
Paulius, would you like to add something to that perspective?
Yeah, it's a good point, which Romain just highlighted. You have like search and you have discovery. So search is how accurate you have results, but discovery is what data you are feeding in so that the results would be more relevant, like purchase data, clicks data, user behavior data, and then your results are becoming more and more relevant, and the transactions are increasing via search. So I wouldn't say that's like a feature, but it's like a whole set of features and action points which needs to be implemented that search experience would be proper. I would say, if I would need to be short, so I would say statistical boosting for search automatization. So that would be one feature which is very, very important. Automatization itself is very important because e-commerce managers, they are busy, they are lack of time, they need to implement search and they don't want to spend hours on the platform. So as much automatization is on the platform, more easier for everyone and more convenient. So whenever you can automate something like synonym detection, automatization, personalization, everything what comes automatically, it's a relief. So the statistical boosting, when algorithm is learning by itself, is a really important and influential feature. And another one, it's about the data. I mentioned before the data, but we trained all the data which we are receiving from e-commerce business, and we are generating monthly executive report. But it's not like a raw data, what is there, but actually action points which needs to be taken. So that's really interesting, is like your internal personal analytical agent who is trying to learn out of all the data which was collected during the month, and then suggest some kind of improvements and action points which needs to be done. And the third one is not a feature, but in general, when you are in a tender and there are many search providers, vendors, and they are saying we have 400 features and we are worldwide leader, we have 500 features. Actually, in the end, it doesn't matter. It matters results like conversion. And usually it's like an A/B test. If there is like a huge e-commerce player and you want to test it out one another vendor, usually you can just give 5% of your traffic just to compare results. So in the end, these features are not so important. The biggest importance is your conversion via search and how all the features work in a synchronical way. That's, I think, the most important part, the result, which you can generate out of it.
So the tools are important, how you use them and what results you can achieve with them.
Yeah, because those features is like a feature war, showing whole presentations, hundreds of features, but in general, all the people just want that it would be fully automated and that it would be better result than yesterday.
I definitely agree. And speaking about the features, I would say it's a bit caricatural, but I would say that nearly all the solutions on the market do have the same or nearly the same features. It's not a big differentiator, actually. But what is very important, and it was your second point, Paulius, and it's especially true, it's your ability as a software vendor to not only deliver a product and features, but also to deliver an expertise, because that's what we explain to our merchants. It's merchandising and product discovery. It's not a tech topic. There are technical stuff to manage for sure, but it's 80% business, 20% technical. That's our feeling. And the most important part is to be able to take the needs of the merchant, what is his selling strategy or marketing strategy, and to convert this into the product configuration, the search engine configuration. And for doing so, you need experts and consultants that are not necessarily technical, but that are experienced in the field of e-commerce, able to understand the merchant business, and in the end, translate this into the proper configuration. But that's really something humans are doing, actually. Maybe at some point an AI will be able to simplify this, but for now, that's really important to have a human doing it, because we've seen a lot of time merchants that purchase SaaS merchandising solution, they just plugged their e-commerce to the SaaS solution, but they never received any help from anybody, and they were just doing it wrong, and it was not working, because only using the solution can't be magic. It cannot learn your business, and it cannot know your customer, how they are searching, and so on.
I agree 100%. It's same with all the tools, and it's same in e-commerce platforms as well. If you don't specify what, for example, you're building an e-commerce store and you don't specify how you want it to operate, just give a set of features. Especially, you need someone who has experience in purchasing in that store, how they want to look, how they want it to feel, and they need to give the people behind the project, the people that will be creating it, their experience and their feedback on how to implement it, because just creating a store is not enough. You need the people who know how to run it, and you need the people who will tell you how customers must feel, what should be their experience and their process. So I completely agree. We've seen a lot of implementations that were wrong because the specification wasn't good enough, or maybe it was good enough in terms of what features you want to achieve, but it wasn't specific enough. So I completely agree with that 100%. My next question would be, since you've mentioned that there are so many key factors within search engines or merchandising engines, as you call it, how you stay up to date with everything going on, and with especially with the users' expectations. Some shops can grow extremely fast. There are periods of huge traffic, and especially in the fashion industry, for example, there are periods of summer sale, winter sale, product bundles, loyalties, and everything. So how your solutions are handling that?
Yeah, you mentioned fashion industry, and I can open one topic about visual search or vector search. We see that conversions are skyrocketing actually when we are implementing vector search to specific industries, let's say home decor, fashion, jewelry, where you have strong visuals and sometimes lack of product description. Because everybody knows, search as good as your product description is really in a good position. But if you don't have a product description, you can still search on image search And it's interesting from historical point of view. There are some startups who started this innovation 50, 20 years ago, and they raised 20, $50 million to create Google image search experience into e-commerce. And they were working pretty hard for 10 years. Now, these actually algorithms, these libraries are open source and for free. And we can use it, actually, these technologies in a new project. So that's really huge motivation, actually, to work in this field. And when we talk about search, usually we are discussing about accuracy. Like a lot of, discussion points is about how accurate you are. So you have broad catalog, and then you are going, how narrow down you can go with the results. But when we talk about vector search, actually you can go broader. Example would be that you have a fashion store and you are looking for the t-shirts, but let's say I'm looking specific t-shirts like St. Patrick Day's t-shirts, yes? So it's like some kind of like colors with the green, yes, some kind with this vest, or like I'm looking t-shirts like with the flowers. It's not like in the product description that I found something flowers, like with a flower pattern, but nowadays these open source algorithms actually can show some kind of results which are relevant to the search query, which is very broad and not in product description. Because you can create image to vector and you create search query into vector and to compare vector to vector. So that's really interesting technology, which actually can increase conversions in a significant way. But just for special categories, which is like a visual information. And you mentioned about fashion industry, and just this example in my mind about vectors. But in general, if we are talking about future trends and how we see the future, I would say that it's long tail search phrases, like shoppers are moving towards highly specific natural language queries. Let's like up affordable vegan leather boots with winter, with good grip. And like 70% of all web searches are now long tail. Like we believe that, like around 70% of search queries will be like very long queries. You see, how Google evolves, and that these habits will be adopted to e-commerce sooner or later. And they convert better, like they convert twice better than shorter ones.
Romain, what would be your perspective?
I concur with the long tail search queries. That's something we began to see as well. People are more likely to ask questions directly to the search engines, not exactly questions, but long-term queries. We are also working on conversational search, which I don't believe will replace the standard search, but it's something that should be proposed to the user to allow them to refine their search experience. Like if you ask the engine, I'm looking for a pair of boots with a leather and so on, you're already doing a rather long tail query. So the first intent should be good in terms of results, but the engine could bounce on it and ask the user, okay, what's your budget? And people could say, I have a small budget. And then you have to be able to understand the intent. What is a small budget? It's specific to the shop. So you have to deduce, okay, for this shop, small budget is probably €100, and then you refine the query. So that's the kind of thing we are prototyping as well. And as I said, not necessarily to replace the whole tokenized search experience, but to complement it and to allow the user to refine on a more natural language way rather than just clicking on the filters and things like that. So for us, that's a trend we should follow, actually.
A kind of spin-off question. When Paulius was mentioning the long search and also very specific phrases, how about, let's say, multi-language stores? Like, for example, I have a multi-store that is operating on 5 different channels, and each of the channels is a different store in different language in different country. The products obviously will have different descriptions in some of the languages. Some of them are like in B2B, probably some of them will be pretty standardized because of the number search, like SKU search, right? But if it's a fashion store, that will be very, very different. So how to ensure that everyone has the same experience, whether you're shopping in Poland, France, or Lithuania?
In fact, out of the box, and I think that's the same for Lupa, but it's easy to deal with whatever the language. But the problem is often on the data. And sometimes if a merchant is based in France, his French catalog will be very qualified, but the English one and the German one will be poorly qualified. So you won't be able to have the same accuracy on the search engine due to the data. And that's on this topic, if the merchant has no energy to properly translate or no funds to build a complex solution, that's where modern solutions like building vectors or things like that could help, because there are now multi-language large language models that are able from a content in French to vectorize something that could be used for searching in English. So AI can help at this level, but in the end, the search engine itself, it's state of the art that they can work with multiple languages for many years. That's really the data and how to leverage the data, which is the problem actually.
So having a PIM system with standardized data could be helpful.
Yeah, as well.
I just can add a bit similar, but a bit different how our software handle multilingual searches. That actually you can set up the language for entire index or for specific attributes. So, for example, the language can be set for entire index, but it's also possible to change it for individual attributes. So we usually, when you have specific case, so you can actually work with index and with attributes at the same time. And with the currency, like if we are talking about multi-currency and about globalization and you are going, so I would totally agree that it's usually straightforward approach. Usually we just need a number and then typically like symbol you can handle with UI interface. With the currency, I think that we don't have anyone, like I think Angali and other search engines, like doesn't have a challenge with the currencies. Languages is a bit different story.
That especially highlights the role of PIM system into categorizing data across different stores under the same mother store, let's say.
If the data is in a correct way, it definitely is way easier, everything. Like if all the data in order, so it's like a gold mine. But but usually there are challenges and struggles, and then you try to work in a creative way, how to.
Yeah, in the end, we do as a merchandising provider, we are consumers of the data, and most of the time we are victims of the data quality, which is often not that good. And in the end, it can be very deceptive for merchants, because what we often see is a merchant saying, hey, I want to do a ranking rule based on this data. And we end up saying, you don't even have it, or it's not even with the correct format. So there's nothing we can do with that. You have to clean it up. And that's something which is happening very, very often, even to merchants who are having a PIM system, because as we said for the search engine, if you are just installing a PIM system, moving your data inside it and doing nothing more, and not having a PIM expert defining your catalog structure and so on, in the end, it will be what we call shit in, shit out. You see what I mean? So that's also a topic where human and expertise is important to rationalize the catalog structure, because it will impact the merchandising system in the end, but also plenty of other bricks of the e-commerce application.
Already twice we mentioned that the role of the human in the process of implementing the e-commerce or the search engine, but obviously with the rapid rise of AI features that are everywhere, whenever you open a window or your fridge, there's an AI. I'm a little bit skeptical about how fast it progresses. Obviously, it's super interesting time to be alive, and it's definitely something to look for in the e-commerce. But realistically, what's the role of AI in general machine learning in your part of work when it comes to search engines? How it can impact, or how is it already impacting the merchandising tools, or maybe how we can impact it in the future, in your opinion?
For what you called machine learning, that's something which is already integrated in plenty of solutions, and on a very pragmatical way to build things like recommendations engine, prediction engine, like which product will be popular tomorrow or things like that. So this definitely changed the ecosystem when it appeared. And about the AI, I would say that we can see two different ways. What we often think about is how it will improve the user experience, the client experience, like with the conversational search I mentioned before. But I think there is Another way we are often forgetting about, but AI could probably also improve the merchant experience by being able to analyze the merchant data, the client data, and do some recommendation to the merchant directly, like, hey, you see you're not selling this category that much, you should promote differently or things like that. So the two fields could be covered, in my opinion, in the next years by AI agent that would be here to help humans in the end and not replace them, but to help building advices for merchants.
Paulius, what's your take?
I would say, yeah, it's a very broad definition, AI, and I would narrow down, into three pillars. It's just in our field. Of course, there are many fields, but when we talk about search and discovery, we see three keywords: generative search, visual search, and voice search. If we talk about generative search, those algorithms which appeared in 2022, and it's not stopping, and just keep on going. So this, generative search leverage advanced natural language processing models like OpenAI, understand the intent behind the user query, not just the keyword. And this is like amazing part, like we need to discover that part more deeper. And I believe that in the future, it enables more accurate context-aware search results. So this is, one part. When we talk about OpenAI models, actually, we know when we started working in this field, we noticed that some of our competitors, they have teams, full-time equivalent teams, who are working manually on synonym database. And actually, you can easily automate with OpenAI and just to create this synonym databases in different languages. So it's actually, you are becoming very, very effective, with all the synonym databases. So it's like we are looking for very practical examples where we can reuse generative experience for search. So it's not like a silver bullet that it would changing everything from scratch from the day one, but it's like small particles which you can constantly improve. And there is like some facts that 70% of e-commerce shoppers prefer that search engines that would understand context and can generate recommendations based on natural language queries. So it's like a fact. And like we can't ignore that fact. We need, to follow that trend, that tide. Then when we talk about visual search, so there are also a lot of AI-powered image recognition algorithms, which we need, to work on and just to improve. It's like constant improvement and constant playground with that. And there is another fact, according to Pinterest, image-based search queries are 2-3 times more likely to convert than traditional text-based searches. So it means that it's like a huge importance and huge influence into this field for the future. And voice search. So you are not creating voice search by itself. Usually, again, you are playing with different algorithms, but there is like a Google Vertex AI, Google Speech. There is like this OpenAI Whisper algorithm. So there are like a lot of API-based voice searches which can be implemented. We are constantly, checking what is new and what is happening. And I believe that, again, it's changing. This voice search trend is not so steep, but it takes a significant portion in the future, I believe. And the AI will play a really big part of that.
I completely agree that these are tools to be used. It depends how you use them. They obviously can help with automatization. And we see that in e-commerce too, but trusting them completely and replacing people with it, I think it's a very long way to go, and it probably won't happen in our lifetime.
So we don't want to say that it's like a silver bullet that now it's going to be like a new group. Yeah. But we see that, it's like a puzzle, like a huge puzzle and a lot of pieces. And each piece is like new, it's interesting. Like we need, to test it out, how it works in a general picture. But in general, generative search helps surface relevant products on context and intent. So it's interesting, as you mentioned, it's interesting time to live, to be alive, and just to see what other technologies will appear. We'll see.
I have 2 final questions for you. The first one would be, let's say that I'm considering migrating to other store. That means I can also migrate or change my search engine. What advice would you give me as a e-commerce owner of a business? What should I do to improve my search functionalities, like the merchandising experience for my customer? What would be, or what should I look at? Obviously, from what you told me before, analyze your data, right? Is there more to it?
Yeah, I would say that's really where you should start as a merchant. Understand your user behavior and iterate constantly based on data-driven insight. That's the advice we give to our merchants every time, because often when they start using our solution, they are like, okay, should I do a ranking on the brand attribute or on the color, on the material? We don't know. And what we say to them is, how are your users searching actually? Are they searching with the brand or with the color? This will give you the advice to what you should care about. For me, that's the first thing. It's you should build and enrich your merchandising experience according to what your users are doing on the platform. Because if you're selling, I don't know, clothes or video games to a young audience, their behavior will not be the same if you're selling food and groceries to the elder people, because they will search differently. So you will have to tailor your strategy according to your audience and how they are expecting the search solution to behave. And it's not the same across the whole generation and audience, and even between men and women, and so on and so on. So you should always drive it from your users.
Paulius, do you have anything to add to that?
So totally, yeah, agree with Romain. And I would add, if I would be e-commerce manager and, I need to take some action points in this field, I would say that, there are a lot of vendors and you can ask for audit. Like you can just go and write an email for different vendors externally around it, just can you make an audit? Usually it's free because everyone is interested to work with the e-commerce business. So it's easily actually to ask for free audit of the search, and you can compare actually different audits from different vendors, and you can have, let's say, qualify analysis, not quantity, but via quality, how your search looks like from different point of views from different vendors. That's one point. That's one action point which I would enable to do if I would be e-commerce manager. Another one, if I would have any data related with search experience on Google Analytics, on the internal search platform analytical dashboard. So just to check what is there. And then I would try, to map, all the reports, all the audits, all the internal data, just to have a coordinate where we are at this moment. And then if you are a really big brand, you all the time can ask for A/B tests. So actually, if you think that it can be improved and you can generate a way bigger conversion and transaction, and a way bigger number of transactions via search, you can actually all the time discuss with different search vendors that it would be integrated, and just to give that for them, a couple of % of your site volume, and just to see how it interacts and does it earn. Of course, it requires investment, but it's like third and fourth step to test the water and just to see the proof that does it make any change in transactions or no, when you're starting to compare A with B. So that would be, the first steps, because usually like e-commerce manager can't be an expert in every field. So what usually you need to do, you need to do like proper comparison. So you can't decide, on one solution. If you have a search engine, it's really hard to decide that it's good or bad, like, is it like average? But when you are starting to compare what is new in the market, what kind of new approaches are coming, so then you can compare those vendors and just decide the next steps. So that would be an advice if I would be an e-commerce manager.
We're a huge fan of testing at Sylius, so
yeah, testing works.
Yeah, it's
is better.
Yeah, better to test it and know why it's good, or whether why it's bad, than just be happy when it's good and be sad when it's bad, or change everything when you're not getting the results you want. Yeah, for sure, I agree with that. My final question would be, again, let's get to being an e-commerce manager. What's the biggest like a differentiator for your product in your category? Why would I go, or like what are the best use cases, like what's your best field Why would someone use Lupa or why would someone use Gali? What's the biggest differentiator of your product? Maybe Romain.
I would say, and I think you will be aligned with me, Shemet, because I will speak about open source and the ability of customize stuff. Gali is an open source merchandising solution, which is quite uncommon actually. There are not that much on the market. So if you're a merchant willing to build a really tailor-made search experience for your client, you should definitely go to Gali because the open source nature of our solution would allow your team to customize and to build something that fits your needs with 100%. You will not have to make any compromise with your roadmap or with the product behavior because you'd be able to build exactly what you need on top of a product which is already good out of the box, of course, but you will be able to make it fit totally with your needs. So that's, in my opinion, our differentiator. It speaks to some merchants. Some others prefer to take SaaS solutions that are more rigid but more convenient in certain ways. So for me, that's what differentiates ourselves.
Definitely open source and the customization is very, very close to my heart. Paulius.
Yes, in e-commerce, usually we hear a lot of nice words because it's sales, it's marketing. So there are so many people who talk in a really good way. I mean, in very influential and it's very convincing. And we notice that because like we've been in this market so many years. And we were discussing internally, what is our differentiator factor, and how we need to approach the market. And actually we are coming with very bold and brave approach. And we are saying that it's a commitment. Actually, it's a commitment to the contract that if you work with us, actually, we are committing for better result. Doesn't matter what size you are enterprise or you large scale, mid-sized company or small. We analyze your search experience, we'll ask you questions, and we can actually predict more or less how we can outbeat current results. And this is, what I've said a bit at the beginning of this conversation, that there are so many features, so many nice words, so many, I'm also a true fan of open source. I was with open source all my life and I love open source. But if we are talking about SaaS, it's like this MarTech sector with 13,000 different software. It's like a blood ocean in e-commerce. And I'm missing commitment to the contract that if someone is working in sales, so you need to increase sales and you need to commit to the contract that you will increase, because for e-commerce manager is a high risk. It can lose your head actually if you're changing a search provider and let's say it generates tens of millions of euros because it's a very influential part of e-commerce, and suddenly your conversion drops or your transaction drops. So you just made the huge mistake actually. So you can't take a risk. So we are saying that our differentiator factor that like we are playing this skin in the game, and we are saying that we are committing to the contract.
That's also quite powerful, especially in times of sales marketing when every platform is saying that they're the best platform and they're very
Yeah.
We're also trying to not go that way and speak when we are strong, and speak also when we are not strong. Like be realistic about. Sylius isn't the best solution for everyone and for all the projects, but it's good for some, and those who are willing to implement it are most of the time extremely happy with it. So it's a very good approach, and you can't beat the data. I mean, if you're improving results, then it speaks for itself. Hey, gentlemen, thank you very much for spending almost an hour with me. So thank you for the chat. It was a pleasure. Also, I can add that today we announced SyliusCon that will happen in France again in October. I hope to see both of you there, actually. Maybe we can continue that talk in France in October.